Hello retro fans! It was a bit quiet on my channel over the last weeks. I just uploaded 2 older videos I have recorded somewhere back at the beginning of the year because I was working on some music related stuff, but now I'm trying to catch up with a couple of topics that has been arrived over the last weeks already. And there is one very recent thing, and this is another firmware update for the Ultimate64. And this is basically one of the basics, or one of the requirements, or I don't know, one of the initial step to continue my testing of the ARM2SID. And in this episode, I'm going to install the newest firmware, and we're going to set up the ARM2SID on the Ultimate64, and we will check whether this is going to work with the SFX OPL FM synthesis as well. And as a very last thing, I'm want to try to access the I/O pins on the I/O adapter, on the expansion port adapter, in order to see whether we can get the address signals back from the expansion port, because Gideon has suggested a kind of a solution, and hopefully this is going to work. Then let's go on. And here we are with the Ultimate64 already on my desk, and I have installed the ARM2SID already on this board. And as you can see, I'm using the socket version, so not the version with those external cables, but we're probably going to test the version with the cables as well. But as a very initial step, we go ahead with the socket version of the ARM2SID. As you may know, this is one of the newest SID replacement devices available on the market, and especially this version is able to emulate up to 3 SIDs. Just keep this in mind, plus some FM synthesis, which is a very interesting, very funny thing on the C64. And it is available in 2 versions. You may just go back a couple of videos on my channel to see my very first impression on the ARM2SID to get more information about this incredible device. And actually I'm testing this on the Ultimate64 because on the previous firmware version we had a couple of issues with some settings, and this has been addressed already. But for today's purpose, I'm going to test the newest firmware, and therefore let's move on to the Ultimate64 menu. We just have to access our file browser, our Ultimate menu, and it's supposed to be on my Ultimate stick. And there is hopefully one firmware file that's called something with U, I think. I may have remembered the name, so update 1.1.0.1.18. So let me check twice that I go for the correct version before I'm going to install a wrong firmware version. So it's basically called 3.5a, so I was a little bit wrong going for the U, so 3.5a 1906-23 plus version 1. So let's see what's going to happen now. So basically the Ultimate64 is now checking whether the checksum of this firmware file is alright. And let's hope for getting some OKs already. And now we're going to go through the flash progress, which takes a couple of seconds, and then hopefully we just have to have one reboot, and then we should have the most recent firmware. The changelog isn't telling that much about any changes. It just has addressed some custom cartridge handling, so that's more or less an internal thing, I assume. And otherwise the changes are more or less minor. My impression is that this firmware release is mostly to get the Ultimate cartridges and the Ultimate64 up to the very same level of firmware, because the most, well, let's say, biggest changes we have seen in the previous firmware update already, which has addressed a couple of things we have seen in the past, and which has improved the performance of the Ulti-SIDs as well. I'm still in the middle of comparing all those SID replacements against each other. Takes quite a while, and over the last weeks I was indeed pretty busy with a lot of normal life things, and therefore I'm a little bit behind the schedule. Now we get the question whether we want to reset the configuration. And as it says, it's not required, and since the changes are not tremendous, I'm going to say no, because this makes my life a bit easier. And now it has switched off, so let's switch it on again. And well, it still boots, that's a very good thing. And as a very first exercise, I like to go into the configuration menu to see whether we can configure our SID1 and SID2 in a way that it will work with the ARM2SID. And the most important thing here is that we set SID socket 1 to D400, and the SID socket 2 address is going to be a range, and as you can see it's DF00 to DFFF. And this is quite new, because this setting was missing in the former firmware versions. I can't really say which version brought that setting to us, but initially we had a chance to set it to either DE00 or some of this other addresses in between, or to DF00, and the ARM2SID SFX emulation requires a range, and therefore we have to go for DF00 to DFFF, and then we keep all the other settings as they are. And now if we go into my file directory, into my ARM2SID directory, and go for the test program, we should be able to set in our address menu our configuration to socket, and here we're going to set this to both, so that we have SID emulation as well as the SFX emulation. And as you can see, we are not able to set any addresses anymore, because we simply required to set this on the Ultimate64 or to use the grabber lines, but since we are using the socket version, we are not required to use the grabber lines. And I want to save this permanently, so that this is going to survive a reset as well. And now let's jump into the FM Jam demo, and hopefully we're going to see, or better to hear, some SFX emulation as well. And here it is. So this is indeed very nice that this feature is now working. So I consider the ARM2SID now fully compatible to the Ultimate64. And whether you want to use the UltiSIDs or the ARM2SIDs, you're really free to choose now. And that's very nice that we have the chance to configure it in a way that this is going to work. So as a very next thing, or as a next thing, or as a last thing, I don't know, I'd like to test whether we get some signals on the expansion port. If you have watched one of my previous videos where I was showing that some of the more newer firmware versions are disabling the IO1 and IO2 signal on the expansion board, which renders, let's say, the usage of the FPGA SID a bit kind of more useless, to say it like this. And especially the adapter I have created to run the FPGA SID, especially 2 FPGA SIDs on the Ultimate64 on this board. Well, I'm sorry, I lost the sentence. So the adapters I have created to run 2 FPGA SIDs on the Ultimate64 requires to use the IO1 and the IO2 signal, and this wasn't working in the previous firmware versions, and now it should work, not because of changes in the firmware, but Gideon has proposed or suggested some kind of workaround or some kind of fix, and I'd like to test this. And we're not going to use the FPGA SID for this example. We're going to use the ARM2SID because it works basically the very same way. We just have to remove the bridge cable between the adapter and the ARM2SID, and then we're going to use this grabber cable. And in order to do so, we will switch off the C64 for a short moment, in order to avoid any problems. So just have to get this out of the socket, and then we can put this into the socket. And there's basically just one problem. We probably won't hear anything, but well, let's see whether we can find a solution for this one as well. This is going to be our audio cable, and this is going to be our IO1 and IO2 cable. So as you can see, I have modified those wires already in order to be a little bit more flexible while testing those devices. And we have to connect IO1 to, so you can't see it, so let's make it like this. IO1 needs to be connected to pin 7 of the expansion port. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And IO2 needs to be connected to pin 10. So it's 8, 9, 10. And then we have to feed back the audio signal into socket 2. So let's see whether we can fool this by just adding the grabber to the IO pin, or the audio in pin. I hope there is enough space so that we are not going to connect something to the other pins. But basically I think it should work. And then let's switch it on again. And well, we're going to need some pictures. Here we go. And now let's see if we can configure the ARM2SID to run in stereo mode. Run So now we have to change this to wire, and we're going to set this to SID, and we want to have another SID at DF00. So SID left, SID right. This sounds fantastic. Let's set this back to mono. To stereo, so we do not have a down mix. And then let's store the configuration. And then let's jump back into our configuration menu and set the address of our SID socket to DF00 to avoid any troubles. And then we may have to find a 2-SID demo where we can change the address. So that's probably going to be let's see whether the summer demo are working. And now we have to use DE00, which is a bit unfortunate because we set it to DF00. So let's try another demo. I'm not sure about a Blade Runner. Let's see whether this perhaps. Let us set this to DF00. Nope. It's a different address as well. I don't know whether I pick DF00 and we want to use DE00. Well, then let's reconfigure the ARM2SID to DE00. That's probably faster than finding a demo that works with DF00. So SID right, switch this off, save it permanently, quit, and test it again. And just one live, DE00 should work or not. I have expected something else. Second SID address D420, so that's wrong again. Let's try this one again. I should have remembered which demo was using DE00. It was just a few minutes ago. But here we go. So. And now let's listen to it. Actually a little bit hard to say, so let's check something else. Volume socket 2. So there's actually some sound on socket 2. But to me it sounds very similar. Well, I tend to say it is actually not working. So let's see, when we go and access the cartridge settings and set cartridge to none. So that's basically what Gideon has suggested. If we are not going to use any internal cartridge, then we should have a signal on the expansion port. But right now, let's set it to a cartridge and see if something disappears. I assume we may have to reset. And perhaps we should use something that is more obvious. So for this demo I know it starts with the second SID. And then the first SID comes in. And as we can hear nothing, we know it is not working. I'm just a bit puzzled why we get a mono signal. But obviously here are some voices are missing. So let's see whether we can change this by going to cartridge, setting this to none. Everything else is disabled. Let's do a reboot. And now let's try it again. Nope, still no sound. So I tend to say it's not working. That's strange indeed. So let's have a look at ARM2SID configuration once again. Left channel found at D400, that's fine. Extended, restart the tester, menu. DE00, DF00. SID. So everything looks fine to me. I have just some issues. Why we get a mono signal, so basically this means that the two SIDs are playing the very same thing, so it shouldn't be the case because we set it to left and right. So perhaps we're going to test something in addition. If we go and power off the Ultimate64 in order to button to remove the audio in of socket 2, then basically we shouldn't have any signal on socket 2. And since I set the balance to left and right, we should end up with a signal on just one side. That's indeed a bit small. So let's play this one again. Waiting for the first SID to come in. Here it is, and now it is just on one side. So the penning is right, that's working fine. And basically we got still no proof whether the second SID is working, but now we found that we are able to distinguish between SID 1 and SID 2. So let's set it back to our audio. On socket 2. I end up with the wrong picture all the time. Well, I have changed my setup, so take some time to get used to it. And if we now start a demo again, still have no audio on the second SID. So I assume there's still no activity on the expansion port. And strangely, we got a mono signal, so the ARM2SID plays the voices of the first SID on both SIDs, which is, well, strange indeed. It should play the other SID. SID left, SID right. So basically it should be mute at all and just playing the first SID and not playing the content of the first SID on both SIDs. That's indeed strange. That's not the intention. I would expect if we set it like this, then, well, then I would be kind of... No, even then, nope. The second SID is not supposed to play anything else except that comes from DE00. The down mix to mono is off, so, this is very strange. And another strange thing is that we do not see that it has detected the right channel on a different address. So basically I still assume that the fix Gideon has suggested is not working the way he is, well, hoping, and me too, which is indeed a little bit unfortunate. And well, it looks like that needs indeed some bug fixing. But basically I'm quite happy that at least the FM synthesis is working. That's a very nice thing, and that there's at least one portion of the ARM2SID is working. And if we just go back and switch it back to perhaps sometimes today I will find the right button. Well, I'm sorry for that. So if we switch it back to the socket version, using a similar configuration, so what I was going to test is if the stereo mode is working. We have just ARM2SID not found. Okay, that's new. So let's check whether we have set this to something very strange. Basically not. Set it back to the range. Install it again. ARM2SID not found. So perhaps I have broken something or not. So let's do another start. Maybe I have moved it a bit while I was working on the cables. Here we go. Yes. So, and now we're going to configure it to DF, DE. That's basically fine. That's all we want to have. And it's already okay. And then let's set this to DE. And let's test this demo again. And now we got the sound of the second socket on the right side. And soon the sound of the left socket should be on the left side, of the first socket should be on the left side as well. Here it is. So, very nice. Well, at least this part is working on our Ultimate64 with the ARM2SID in socket mode. So my basic recommendation is, if you want to run the ARM2SID on the Ultimate64, then go and order the socket version. It is indeed less hassle than the wired version. Basically, the wired version is well, built for a standard C64 board, which has only one socket. And if you want to have the full sound emulation of up to 3 SIDs or 1 SID and FM synthesis, then you have to use the wired version on a standard C64 board. And my recommendation as well is to get some grabbers somewhere on eBay, for example, add them to the wires. You can even avoid soldering if you just get rid of the insulation and just kind of drill the wire to those grabbers. Then you don't have to solder at all, and then you can easily connect those grabbers to your C64 pins on the CPU and on the expansion port, and everything will work fine. But if you want to have this on your Ultimate64, then go for the socket version. As you can see, it is very easy to configure. The concept is very similar to the FPGA single adapter I have built, because it is using the very same signals from the second socket, and therefore you can configure the address lines for the FPGA SID with the configuration of the Ultimate64, no soldering required, everything on the fly, and everything is working very, very well. So basically, I'm happy that we have at least some progress with the ARM2SID. Unfortunately, it looks like that address line's still not working. I will investigate this even further, and as soon as we have found something to address this, something to fix this, I will let you know. So, as usual, thank you very much for watching, and see you for the next episode. Bye bye.